Okay, welcome everybody. We're very, very excited to have Mrs. Ilana Cowland here with us this morning to give us some perspectives on dating. So please give her your full attention. Markers, eraser. You know, last year I spoke here. Last year spoke? Yes, and then I had a meeting with one of the girls outside. Oh, you did? And 6 months later, she became my niece. Rena, of course. She was my cousin. I remember. You remember that? Yeah. So there we go. She was smirking the whole way through the dating situation. Lovely. Yeah. Lovely. All right. Hi, ladies. How are you? Okay, so I'll try and finish as close to time as is possible. Is this what's good? Is this good? Yes? Can you hear at the back? Yes? Okay. So, hello. My name's Ilana Cowland at gmail.com. If anybody wants to send me a note afterwards, you're welcome to. And we're going to do a little session on dating. So what we're getting, I'm sorry, I can't provide you any husbands, and people get very excited during dating classes. It's not that simple. But I'm going to give you a little tool to take home with you that I think you'll find, and I've been told by people with whom we've shared this, is quite helpful to, if you like, collate all the information so you can make a good decision. The easiest way to date, really, is to go out with a couple of, revolting people and then suddenly find a prince, because then it's an easy no and an easy no and then an easy yes, right? But it doesn't usually work that way. It's a shame. You go out with very nice people, and the decisions to say yes and to say no, especially when you're being set up with high quality young men, it's a shame, is complex, right? Because everyone's a great person. So I'm hoping that today's information will help you make confident decisions, both in terms of who you date and what you do with them once you date. Okay, so that's the goal, and here we go. All right, so let's summarize Jewish dating for a moment, shall we? Imagine you go home and you go to, the big world, and someone says, "Oh, you're a religious girl. I hear you date strangely." No, not us. We don't date strangely, So if you were to describe dating to the stranger, it sounds a little like this. Idea of boy gets suggested to girl. Idea of girl gets suggested to boy. If they don't like the idea, they never meet. If they do like the idea, they meet. They meet until one of them doesn't want to marry the other, at which point it's over, or until both of them want to marry each other, at which point they get engaged. Yeah, it's not so complicated. I don't know what fuss is about. Okay, so it's the funny thing, of course, is that it's quite effective. And when I say that, it's not me saying it; it's the statistics that are saying it. Anybody know the statistics on marriage and divorce in the Orthodox communities? So it depends when you ask. If you're asking 20 years ago, the results are much better. What tends to happen is the more Western we get, the more our results reflect Western results. And we see that trend, which means that when we do things our way, it works really, really well. So 20 years ago, it would be true to say that the divorce rates in the Orthodox communities were somewhere between 2 and 15%. As we get more Western, our divorce rates rise, but the more secluded the communities are, the lower those rates stay. So a lot of people will say, well, that's probably because, and then they'll list things like it's really hard to get divorced, if you're religious, right? Or there's a bias against it, or the rabbis don't let you, or it's difficult with lots of children, and all those things might be true. But there's another survey that was done more recently, which is a very important survey, and when they surveyed across the board, they found that not only were Orthodox communities presenting lowest rates of divorces still, but they were also presenting highest rates of happiness and satisfaction in their marriages. So it's not like there are millions of people desperate to get divorced, but they can't. It's that people seem to be happy in their marriages on the whole. So we're doing something right, and we're going to take a look at what it is that we're doing. And you'll take this information and you'll apply it to whatever dating setups you have. Some of you might do real traditional, shidduchim. Some of you may come from more open backgrounds. Everybody will have their own story. But the information I'm going to share with you today really isn't limited to that. It's limited to the process of ascertaining whether the person in front of you is the person that you want to stay married to. Okay, so we're going to gather some information now. I'm going to ask you a question. Your answers are going to go on the board, and we'll go from there. Okay, so what do you need in a relationship for marriage to work? This is when I stop talking and you start talking. Yes. Trust and a good board marker. Okay. Trust. Yes?
Like similar hashkafic, like viewpoint and goal.
Yeah, good. Okay, similar hashkafic. So hashkafa, goals, love. Yeah. Communication. Companionship. Yes? Safety. Who said attraction? Who said attraction? Okay, good. I'm kidding. Yes, okay, good. Attraction. Yes. Yes. Respect. Yes, yes. Anything else? What? Loyalty. Anything else? Gosh, you're very undemanding. Excellent. Anything else? Yes.
There's shared enjoyments, shared lives.
Yeah, sure. Let's say shared interests. Likes. Yeah. Okay, the truth is what is exactly on the board doesn't matter. You can change it and you can vary it. What's really important is how I've divided it up. So can you spot the 3 different categories? Religion? Not necessarily, yeah. Could be, but it's that's a subcategory, but not necessarily entirely religion, yeah? Yeah, close. Okay, I'm going to call it something similar to that. I'm going to call this one physical, this one emotional, and this one we're going to call intellectual. Okay? And spiritual or religion can be part of that whole intellectual thing, really values-based distinctions. Now, why am I dividing this into 3 categories? Because you divide into 3 categories. You are partly how you see the world, your values, what's important to you, what you focus on, what you prioritize. Partly how you interact with people, what you feel, your weaknesses, your strengths, what's important to you, how to communicate with you. And partly your body and attraction. And we're looking for something that fits all 3 categories. And this is a word that people think they understand it, but they've come to replace it. So the word that we're looking for, which is I'm going to talk about in a minute, is the word compatibility. We're looking for compatibility in all 3 areas. What has compatibility been replaced by? What's replaced compatibility? What are people looking for instead of compatibility? Yes. Yes. Very good. They're looking for perfection, okay? And looking for, meaning they want someone who's perfect in all these 3 areas. Now, if you want to find the common language between perfection and compatibility, you can say that someone who is compatible is perfect for me. You can say that. If you need to use the word perfect to make you feel better, then you can say perfect for you. But perfect for you and perfect are not the same thing. And when they get confused, we run into all sorts of problems, okay? So let's take a look at the problems that we run into when we're looking for perfection. Anybody can think of any? What's the problem with finding someone who's perfect? Yes. Yes, no one's perfect. That means that they don't exist, which means that first you have to go find a husband, and then you can go and buy yourself a pet unicorn. Understand? Okay, good luck finding either, let me know. Okay, there's no such thing as perfection. So if you're actually looking for perfection, problem number one is it doesn't exist, you won't find it. Good, what else is a problem with perfection? I mean, that's enough really, but still, what else? Yes? That's right. The other problem with perfection is that you're not perfect, because it doesn't exist, okay? So you're looking for something that's got nothing to do with what you are and who you need, okay? And it's actually really unhelpful in a relationship where one person sort of ostensibly is more perfect than the other. It creates insecurity, it creates imbalance, it creates a whole bunch of negative things. So we're not looking for, if we're not perfect, which we're not, we don't want perfection anyway. Yeah. What else? Yes. Absolutely. Growth. And who here would like to grow? Of course you like to grow. You're in seminary. Okay, who wants to grow? Who want to sit? Okay. So imagine I have 5 fingers and I want to grow and I wake up in the morning. Good news, I now have 6. Good? No, not good. Okay. Growth doesn't mean things that shouldn't grow should grow. It means that things that should grow. So if you're talking about something which is already perfect, there is no dynamic for growth over there, which is not what anybody wants in any case. In fact, what that would lead to, if anything, is tremendous amount of boredom. Okay, so that's not good either. Yeah. Two more things I'll throw out at you. Another problem with a couple of more things actually. One is that if you're looking for perfection, the expectations that you are going to be completely disappointed, and that's going to cause a lot of damage. Number 2, think about it. If we're all looking for the perfect guy, then everybody's after the same one. Okay, and then he goes. And then the next one comes up, you know, and then off the girl goes and everybody goes behind her. And then the next, you know, everybody's after the same person if everyone's looking for perfection. But if I'm not looking for perfect, I'm looking for compatible to me, then the person who is right for me is as wrong for you as you are different to me. And therefore we don't have to enter into this horrible culture of competing against each other for that one guy, which is a horrible thing. It does a lot of damage to relationships. It creates a lot of insecurity and comparison. It's really not a very good thing. And the final problem with perfection is because perfection doesn't exist, if perfection is the only acceptable standard, it introduces something that should not exist in dating. And unfortunately, it creeps in. The more perfection creeps in, the more this creeps in. And that is dishonesty. Okay, dishonesty, we have to hide all our flaws and not be open with any of our flaws. I have to say, when I got married, one of the most helpful points in knowing that I was going to marry my husband was an honest conversation about his and my flaws. You know, you're going to live with this person's flaws. You have to make sure that you can handle them, that they're good for you, that you're good for them, that you're built to deal with them. They're not going to disappear. They're going to be there. So the more you can say, wow, this person is great for me because of how wonderful they are and suitable to me and growth together because I can handle their flaws. This is something that is not something that's impossible for me. This is part of how our growth will happen. That is the other side of the growth question. And it's true there are some things you only find out about your spouses afterwards. There's some things you only find out about yourself afterwards. But certainly the Hishtadlus needs to take into consideration who we really are. And when we're not allowed to display any sense of imperfection, then we start just conning each other. And then it's really a problem after marriage. And we see that happening as well more and more. Now, sometimes, to be honest, sometimes you have to know who your shadchan is, and you have to say all the right things, and you have to play the game, and that's true. But when you are coming down to a real decision as to, you know, we've dated, you're very impressive, I'm very impressive, aren't we wonderful and perfect except for our microphone skills? So, you know, at that point, before you go forward, there has to be, even if it's just between the two of you, an honest conversation about can we really be there for each other's weaknesses and needs? Without that, you know, it's just square boxes marrying each other as opposed to puzzle pieces that need to fit in and create something that, you know, is beautiful. So, so perfection's got to go. And in its place, we have to bring in this word compatibility. So when I say compatibility, what I mean is who I am and who you are. When you put those together, it works in the direction of healthy growth. I'll say that again for you avid note takers. Who I am and who you are, when put together, works in the direction of healthy growth. I'm adding healthy growth because you can have compatibility that's actually really unhealthy. Okay? I am really weak, I tend to hang out a lot with bullies, right? You might find that in some of your dynamics, really natural dynamics that are really unhealthy. If you're a really weak person, hanging out with a bully, it doesn't do you any good, but it just might be very natural because you might be used to other people taking the lead, and the bully might be someone who's quite used to finding someone who's a bit of a victim. You might find this in your friend dynamics, okay? If you're a person who has a hard time standing up for themselves, what's a better dynamic for you? Perhaps someone who's accepting, who's encouraging, who gives you confidence, who gives you space, who believes in you, right? There are better dynamics out there. So we do have to keep an eye out for our tendencies for unhealthy dynamics. And we're looking for who I am and who you are together. This is going to go in the direction of healthy growth. Okay. So the claim today, I hope that bit's clear about compatibility and perfection. The claim today is that we need compatibility, again, who I am and who you are works together in all three areas, in the intellectual or values area, in the emotional, and in the physical. That's what we're looking for. And I'm going to go as far as to say that 80% compatibility in all three areas will give you a better chance of a successful marriage than 100% compatibility, but only in 2 out of 3 areas. Okay. It's got to be the right 80%, that's also true. But 80% compatibility in all 3 areas will give you a better chance of a long-term successful relationship than an enormous amount of compatibility, but in only 2 out of 3 areas. And in order to support that idea, what we're going to do very simply today is we're going to take a look at what happens when you have relationships that tick 2 out of 3 boxes. Okay? Because 2 out of 3 is quite compelling. 2 out of 3 is quite compelling, and I like to give you the confidence to say, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I've got to be able to tick at least, you know, a good chunk of compatibility in all 3 areas. 3 out of 3, anything less than that is a fail. Okay, so let's take a look at those relationships so you can start to identify them when you date that are, you know, very good, but in only a small section of the story. Okay, so that's what we'll do. So if we're going to divide our I and E and P into 3 sections that are 2 out of 3, what are we going to have? IE, IP, EP. 3 real relationships, but none of them marriage material. So let's take a look. What does the the IE relationship look like? You have loads of these, by the way. Yeah, they could look like friendships. These are relationships where you really see the same the same way. You could really build an organization together. You could discuss things. You don't look at the other person and think like, wow, they're just so crazy. You get each other's languages, and might be love, there might be trust, there might be relatability, relation, all those things. What there isn't is attraction. So do you have relationships like that? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You have friends, you have siblings, you have cousins, you have parents. This relationship can go into many, many, many areas. This sort of relationship. What it isn't is marriage. So why is attraction so important? What? It's very important. So I'll give you two reasons. One is intimacy, and the other one is faithfulness, monogamy. Okay. In the way that we do things, everything to do with our physical world will only find expression within our relationship. Unfortunately, that's not true in the outside world. It's a beautiful thing. So everything that's going to happen in your life is going to, in the physical realm, will happen within the context of your relationship, and that's it. So this has to be a really fulfilling and important part of your life. I'll tell you who needed convincing of that when they were about your age. That was me. Tell you the truth. Okay, personal story. I went out with a very fine young man. Very, very fine. Very, very, very fine. Very, 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 very fine. So fine, I kept telling myself he was really fine. A little bit too skinny for me, but very fine. And, you know, one of those. And I went out and, you know, he was really a very, very special person and very impressive and had everything that I wanted in terms of how he saw the world and good midas and all the rest of it. But too skinny for me, like, all right. So, I went to speak to my rabbi, and I had been doing a very, very good job of convincing myself that, you know, this is 100% perfect. So he said, how's it going? Baruch Hashem, such a good boy, all true. and at one point he said, so is any problems? He said, the rabbis asked me, is there any problems over here? And I could feel the heat rising. Like, I don't have this discussion with anybody. The rabbi was, I can feel myself getting slowly from pink to purple. I said, only one tiny little small thing, maybe. So he said, and what's that? So I looked everywhere but at the rabbi, and I said, maybe, I don't know, it could be that I'm not sure that I'm entirely attracted to him. The rabbi said, what? I'm like, I said, I don't think I'm attracted to him. So the rabbi said, oh, so should we call it off then? I'm like, okay, great. Now, I then got a very, very big telling off. I got a very big telling off from the rabbi. Are you joking? Please tell me you know better than that. Really? What are you talking about? So I sat there, feeling very stupid, extremely relieved, and went on to marry somebody else. Okay, so this is an important part. We are raised in tznius. It's a wonderful thing. We all come from different backgrounds. By the way, I didn't even come from such a sheltered background, particularly. I wasn't completely strange to the concept of boys and girls, but I got like very firm in my head over here, and I was put right by the Rav. I'm very grateful to that. It's part of the indication that this is your husband. It's not just that they have the right hashkafas for you. The unexplained sort of pull that even the body agrees with is part and parcel of that. How you know that there is something going on here that's going to be lasting and enduring. We're very machmir. We have very, very strong boundaries all the way through dating and engagements. But there is an indication of a feeling of comfortable closeness, desire for the other person, and that's an indication, and that is not to be left out. If it was to be left out, Kodesh Baruch Hu wouldn't have put it in there. Okay, so. The IE relationship can be a fantastic relationship, but if there is no sense of minimally attraction, so then at that point you can say this is a great relationship, but very hard to put my bets on it, this is going to work for me, for the rest of my life, and therefore the IE relationship does not become a marriage relationship. Now I will say also that for those of you who, chas v'sholom, have been exposed to movies in your life, the understanding that we have of immediate attraction on the first sighting, that's also sheker, okay? And there are some people who feel a sense of something very quickly, and there are some people who don't, and it builds up. I can tell you with confidence that the ongoing success of the relationship is not better for people who immediately found each other attractive. If by the time you're making a decision and you've spent enough time with each other, the attraction has built, that means it is there. Whether it built slowly or built quickly is really irrelevant. The only thing I would say is that if it's there very, very quickly, you're at a disadvantage, because now you have to put that aside and make a good decision. If you walk into a room and you find somebody immediately attractive, you're at a disadvantage, because there's another reason for it to be a chaval if it doesn't work out, and you have to, I guess, have the intelligence to realize that that's not enough on its own either, And by the way, that's part of the reason why we do a lot of research before we date, so that by the time you're in the room, a lot of the information's already been ascertained, so, it doesn't have to take so long to figure out if everything else is there, because many of those questions have to have been answered well for you to be in front of the person to begin with, okay? So attraction is very important. An IE relationship that does not, at some point, given enough time, and I would say enough time, could easily be 5 to 6 dates. If you're with someone and the only thing that's not right is that there's physical attraction, you can really give it 5 to 6 dates, and if it carries on and there's just nothing there, then there's just nothing there. Nice to meet you. I have a roommate you must meet. Okay, that's how it goes. So, are you comfortable with that, ladies? Do you agree? Yes, I got the thumbs up from the staff. Okay, good. All right. Beseda Gomer. I once met a woman who told me I took a risk. I felt no attraction at all. I said, did you really do that? She goes, yes, I took a risk. I knew myself. I thought it might grow. I said, that was stupid. She said, I know. Baruch Hashem, it worked out for her. It's not a recommended way of doing things. Okay? All right. So there are those exceptions out there, I guess. Don't be one of them. Okay. Next. Then we have the IP relationship. What is the IP relationship? So this is you can see, right? This is relationship where hashkafali, everything's great and everything's set, and this is what I want from life. And I like how he sees the world, and and how he wants to express his Torah, how I want, and what's important to him is what's important to me. Very nice. And on top of that, I'm definitely attracted. What's the problem? What's the but over here? emotional stuff, which could mean a whole bunch of things, okay? It could mean that I can't trust this person. It could mean that this person's sense of honesty is so different to mine that we can't really communicate. It could mean that I feel very insecure around this person. Now, you can work things out if things come up and see if they're resolvable, but at a point where you've just got an impasse, where it's just not good, where what his weaknesses are really don't work for me, I have no patience, at that point you have to really examine the dynamic, and dynamic's very important. I don't know if you ever heard sometimes of people who get married and they get divorced and you just can't understand it because they're such great people. Yeah, you ever come across that? And by the way, you're right. And what's the proof? Often they go on to get remarried and they have wonderful lives as they meet other great people. So what went wrong? So it's not usually, again, the greatness of the person that was in question. It was often the dynamic of the person. So I'll give you an example of this, okay? You've got that guy who's like Mr. Fun, Mr. Perfect Madrich, Mr. Energy, and Mr. That guy. And then, of course, he's the most popular and the most fun. So he gets set up with like the perfect, whatever that means, right, girl, and she is like so petite and together and well dressed, and then he's the best and she's the best and perfect, and it's a complete disaster. Why? Because take a look at this, Mr. Fun, Mr. Loud, Mr. What's his weak spot, Mr. Fun, Mr. Loud? Huh? Could have been, but not in this case. Of course, I've imagined him, and you haven't, so it could be the right answer, but there we go. Little bit insecure, could do with a little bit of acceptance and, and safety, right? And Miss Perfect and Miss Wonderful and Miss Well-Dressed and Miss Always Looks Good, and what's her weak point, little Miss this one? You said the answer you gave before, whoever that was? Very, very medactic and muckbid and unorganized and controlling and that sort of thing, okay? So what happens? He needs acceptance, and what does she give him? Criticism and control. Okay? Doesn't matter how great they are, ostensibly, on your insecure scale of how great these people are. Okay? Their dynamic is a disaster. What he needs, she doesn't offer him. What she offers is bad for him. What does he need, really? Someone very wonderful and loving and accepting and who gets it and is okay and makes him feel safe and secure so he doesn't have to perform, right? She needs a good slap in the face. No. She needs someone, who might not stand for her hakpadas and who has enough confidence to put her in a place where she needs to, but at the same time has standards, enough that his very existence is not a massive challenge to everything that she considers acceptable, right? They need to know themselves. And this first couple their dynamic didn't work. It wasn't a question of perfect. It was a question of incompatibility. So very, very quickly, the way to do e-compatibility is to ask yourself 5 questions. Number 1, is everybody here okay? Okay means an emotional state where they're able to give. Okay, that might mean things like aggression, abuse, addiction, trauma might have to have been dealt with before we're ready to be okay. Okay, the things that I just mentioned generally have one thing in common, and they put someone into a space where they're not really able to give because they're still taking care of their own pain. Okay, so is everybody okay? Is everybody here at a state of emotional maturity and having worked through either their negative points or their experiences that they can really give to another person? If a person is so caught up in themselves or so in their own pain that they're not ready to give, it's going to be very hard to build any form of dynamic. So everyone has to be in a giving place, well enough, healthy enough, mature enough to be in a giving place. After that point, we can ask 4 questions that are really just a reflection. Again, what are my strengths and what are my needs? And then, what are his strengths and what are his needs? And then the game to play is when we check my strengths against his needs and his strengths against my needs, do we have something that can be compatible, and what can we see healthy growth coming from here? We're not looking for no needs or no weaknesses. We're looking to see whether this all works together. In fact, that very same rabbi who got me off the hook for the first young man was back involved with the second young man, and he sat down and he said, okay, let's go through all the weaknesses. And he thought he was putting me off, and he wasn't. He was confirming things for me, because I knew that those are things that if that's my package, I can work with that. I'm, who I am can help. Some things I know I can't handle, those I could. And then he did the same exercise on the other side, and he had to make sure he could handle my stuff. And then there was a working dynamic. Okay? So with as much information as HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you, and I'm telling you now, He doesn't give you everything, and that's okay also, but with the information that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you, that's your hishtadlus. Okay, so that's, so then we have missing in E. Now generally, if a relationship has an E problem, it disappears very, very quickly. If you don't trust them, you don't like them, they're insensitive, they bother you, there's all this emotion, it just doesn't work. Generally, an IP relationship will fizzle very quickly because E needs to be there for the relationship to work. It doesn't really matter if you have the right hashkafas. If I think you're, insensitive and nasty, it's just not going to work, right? It doesn't really matter if you look good. You're starting to look uglier to me, the less I have respect for you, right? That's generally what happens. So the IP relationship tends to go very quickly, very, very easy one to possible, except if the problem with the E is something to do with a meter of control, whereby the relationship should be over, but one person's not letting the other person go. Okay, at that point, the relationship can go for a long time. And you might have found that, by the way, in friendships. You may have experienced friendships that you've known for a long time and not good for you, but you just can't really get out of them because someone's like holding on to the other person and there's like a funny dynamic. So relationships that don't work emotionally fizzle very quickly unless the problem is some form of control, in which case you have to, quickly get a mentor in to help you figure out what's going on, okay, and then help you extrapolate yourself from that one. Okay, I'm assuming that you've done Shalom task workforce things. Okay, great. So any of those red flags, bye. See you never. Okay, good. All right. So IP. So that relationship also is very quick to puzzle, and the next relationship is the EP relationship. What is the EP relationship? The EP relationship is the one that just feels great, except for, okay? It feels great emotionally and, attraction-wise, everything else, but, okay? Now, I'll tell you the truth. Your demographic doesn't tend to suffer from this too much, unless you're bringing in previous relationships, okay? Unless you're growing out of old relationships. The demographics that really suffer from this are communities that don't understand the value of values, that don't understand how important hashkafa is. Hashkafa is a word that's only ever on my list when I'm teaching to frum girls, okay? So you're at a very big advantage, actually, because really it's the relationship that doesn't have I in common that suffers often the most, funnily enough. Why would that be, by the way? Why would it be that of all the things, if I is missing, it suffers the most? Yes? That's right. And more than that, the stuff that was keeping it together is massively impacted by the lack of I. What do I mean by that? I really, really love this person, but then I find out that we don't have the same values. How long can you love someone that you can't respect? I'm really attracted to this person whose values I think are ridiculous. How long till that dies? Okay, so I is very much an impetus for what keeps the E and the P going also. Okay, so you are at a very big advantage, again, unless you're bringing old relationships with you, that you have to look at with a fresh hashkafic eye. So I want to talk about why it's so important to have hashkafa in common, to have values in common, and what that means and what it doesn't mean. And again, it doesn't have to mean we are identical to each other. It means that we are compatible, which means that when I understand your values, I can really put myself behind that. I'd be really proud of that. I have a lot of respect for that. Okay, Rav Noach Weinberg used to teach a beautiful idea about love. And he explained, right, love is a difficult thing. It's a commandment, right? Love thy neighbor. Have you ever met my neighbor? No. Okay. It's not always easy to love people who are really difficult to love, right? So he gave a practical exercise for this mitzvah. He said, love is really what happens when you focus on people's virtues. You've got a roommate and they're a bit annoying, and they're a bit messy, the relationship's going to go a bit sour until you discover how kind and loyal and loving and wonderful they are, and then whichever one wins of the good or bad, that's how good or bad the relationship will be. Okay? So when I focus on your virtues, that's the feeling that I get when I see how beautiful you are. That's the feeling of love, and that's the mitzvah, he would say, of, B'aftarecha kamocha is actively building the love that you have by actively focusing on how wonderful that person is, and stop focusing on their mistakes that they're making or their bad flaws, or you're not going to feel love. It works that way, right? So I never heard him say this, but I'm going to make a similar parallel, and that is the feeling that you get when you connect a person's values is called respect. And if you think of examples that you may have had in your own life where someone for whom you had respect, you no longer have respect for. Anybody had that fun experience? Yes? Give me an indication if you've lost respect for people. Yeah, horrible, devastating. Isn't it horrible? And think about what happened. Think about what happened. Why did you lose respect? And you'll see it comes down to this. I thought you stood for something and you don't. I thought you'd behave in a particular way and that just wasn't important to you. You betrayed something about how I understood you interact with the world. Now maybe it was just human error and I can forgive you, but the feeling that I have when you don't uphold the values that I thought you did is just lost respect. And when I've lost respect for you, it doesn't matter how much I love you, I don't want you in the same room as me. Just go away. It's not something you want to entertain in a marriage, because it's not very far to go. Okay. So the concept of values is gonna do something very important to us. Number one, it's going to ascertain that there is a respect there that's also going to have a very, very big influence in the love that we feel and the attraction that we feel. Again, if you're attracted to someone and then you find out something disgusting about them, even if you can recognize with your eyes that they're pretty, because deep attraction is not just an understanding of how nice the person looks. There is a chemistry there. It's a quality built on more than that. I always tell people, when we talk about peak compatibility, we're not talking about what you see, what you feel when you first meet them. We're talking about whether, as you get to know them on an and an E level, is your physical attraction to them growing or diminishing? As you get to know them, is the feeling that you have of closeness towards them growing or diminishing? If it's growing, it's growing. If it's diminishing, it's diminishing. That's why you have to give it time sometimes. And have you ever met someone that you thought was very, very attractive on the outside until you got to know them, and now you can't even see it anymore, you don't know what anybody else is talking about? Or vice versa, someone who you didn't think was beautiful, and I'm not talking about boys particularly, just women as well. You may have a friend that you just didn't see as particularly pretty, and now you just see it like pain, just glowing out of her because there's so much specialness to her, that's all you ever see. As you get to know someone, the feeling becomes more reliable the deeper that you know them. Okay. So the concept of values works on the following level. Number one, respect. No shared values, no respect. And it is extremely hard to build a relationship with someone for whom you don't have respect. Number two, what values helps us do is it helps us prioritize. Okay? You receive a certain amount of money, what do you do with it? The answer to that question will lie in your values. Do you spend it on yourself? Do you give it to a good cause? Do you save it and put it away for the future? Do you eat? What you do will be a reflection of your values. I'll give you an example. One of my daughters went for a semester abroad. And it's always I always get frustrated at how my house doesn't run very clockwork sometimes. So she went to a house where it ran completely clockwork. And every excuse that I think I have, this woman has more and her house is tidier. Oh, it's because I work. She works long hours. It's because I have small kids. She has more. She has twins, And so I said to my daughter, okay, your job is to spy and see how she does it and bring me home all the tricks. Okay, and I'm sending you to learn, to teach me what I'm doing wrong. So my house can be tidy as well. So I sent her there. She was there for a couple of months. By the way, that wasn't the only reason that she went, but once she was there, So I said to her, okay, you're living in this house for 3 months. Tell me her secrets. How do I make my house just as clean and tidy as hers? She goes, Mommy, you can't. I'm like, excuse me, why not? She goes, it's not a value for you. I said, it is. She goes, it's not. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you have to understand something. This woman values a tidy house so much that when she works, 60% of her money goes towards cleaning help. I'm like, oh, yeah, no, that's a bit much. She said, Mummy, if it's an Erev Shabbos and it's a choice between cleaning the house and making the food, what would you do? I'm like, well, obviously you stuff everything into the spare room and you cook. She goes, no, she wouldn't. She'd send her husband out to buy some takeout because the cleaning of the house is more important. And Mummy, if somebody called you and said, I need your help, and you hadn't done the ironing, what would you say? I'd say the ironing can wait, right? She goes, well, she wouldn't. She doesn't go anywhere. Doesn't answer the phone till the ironing's done. I said, okay, you're right. I have no chance if that's the case. This is a value to me to the point where it's how I prioritize. Very helpful to marry someone who prioritizes like you do. Do we spend more time on our own or with family? Do we spend more time building our Yiddishkeit or our finances? Are we looking to live in America or Israel? What do we want a school that's going to turn our children into Bali Midas or lawyers and doctors or both, etc., etc. Okay, the concept of prioritization will be reflected in values. And the third, and I think probably the most important part of values is that actually what clarification of values does for you, what it actually does, is it gives you the chance of a life of meaning. You have sometimes those days where you wake up and it just is like, what is it all for? Like, what am I doing? Why is this important? Yeah, you have those days? Not this year, obviously. You know, we have those days sometimes. That feeling of my life is not a reflection of something that makes me feel full of energy, that doesn't feel good, that feels that it's just pointless. That is an indication of meaninglessness. That is an indication where the values that I'm living are not really the values that I really deeply feel. And when you get to your core values and you really dig down and you figure out what they are and you make sure that your life, if you like, changes in accordance with your core values, you don't feel less yourself, you feel more yourself, number one. It's an experience of authenticity. And the life that you are living as a result of prioritizing those values feels more meaningful, because that's really how we access meaning in our lives. So you don't want to be in a situation where ostensibly on the outside it looked like you shared values, but when it came down to it you didn't. So I'll give you an example, not necessarily nogea so from people, but not either. Okay, shidduch, yeah, set up between two lawyers, and they were set up because they have everything in common. They're both doing very well in their law degrees, and they're both going to make, they often jobs, and they're both hardworking, and it looks like this is a really values shared date. Okay, and they get married, and everything's okay. It's about 10 years in, and the husband comes home one day and he says, I sent in my resignation letter. And she says, what? And he says, I can't do it anymore. I came to law because I wanted to make a better world. And all I'm doing is using my brains to get horrible people off the hook instead of, that's what I do. I manage to manipulate things so that people who are doing the wrong thing get off the hook. And I'm really good at that. And this is not what I meant by justice. I'm working for lack of justice because I know how to do that. And I came into law because I wanted to see a better world. And that's not what I'm accomplishing. And so I've decided that we're going to move to Swaziland. I heard there's a lot of orphanages, and we're going to set up an orphan home there because then I'll feel like I'm making a better world, which is really why I came to law in the first place. And she says, sweetheart, sit down, let me get you a drink. You've had a really, really hard day, haven't you? And he says, no, I mean it. And she says, yeah, I know, darling, but you do know that in 2 years' time we'll have enough money to buy our second home. And also, we can't go to Swaziland because of the cruise that we have booked, right? And he says, like, I really mean it. And she says, yeah, so do I. She came into law and career because of things that mattered to her. And he came into law and career because of things that mattered to him. And they didn't necessarily really look into what their values were, because on the outside, everything looked the same. But when it came down to it, his values and hers had nothing to do with each other. How long do you think their marriage has? Well, if he comes around to his senses and puts all the things that are important away to him, then the marriage will be fine, as long as he lives that miserable life where he's pleasing what she wants, right? And if he follows what's important to him and she follows what's important to her, they have nothing left in common. So the question of what is really important to me, what do I want my life to look like? And have I found a partner that shares that, so that we can prioritize in the same way, that we can share meaningful life together, we can make decisions together. When one of us says, hold on, there's something that we have to reinvestigate, we're on the same page enough to have that conversation together, and so that we can have respect for that, for each other through that process. That's going to be the fuel, if you like, to the rest of the relationship. Without that, the whole thing is not enduring. It's the E and the P works until it stops working. It's not fueled in the long term. Okay. The EP relationship, you should know also you got to understand something about the EP relationship, the one that's not values based, is it's very comfortable right now. It feels good now. Emotionally, I feel good, and physically, right now, this feels great. It's got nothing to do with the future. Okay, it might be a reflection of what the media has come to espouse, where you feel good emotionally and physically. That's great. It's not about something deeper that we understand to be an essential part of a long-lasting relationship. Okay, the order, by the way, to make sure you have all three. Sometimes you don't really have a say in the order. Sometimes you just immediately connect to someone, or you knew them before. But if you have a say in the order really is IEP. Figure out if you have values in common. By the way, there's a whole piece of the puzzle that has to happen before you figure out whether you have values in common. What's that? That's right. Find out what your values are. Okay. You should just know most people don't spend a whole year doing that away from home. You are very, very privileged. But if you're wondering what to do for the end of seminary, I know we're not supposed to talk about the end, but then that question of not just what I have to work on, but have I clarified what's so important to me that if my life stood for that forever, I'd be proud of that life. And if I found a partner who had that would be enduring, and that would be a respect-based relationship forever. That's a very big part of the exercise of coming away and figuring out who you are. You've been given lots of values ostensibly, and now you have to do some of that work. You have to hit a core value, a value that makes you smile. A really, really big sense of what's really, really important. If you do that work, then finding a partner who shares that values is much easier. Most people don't even know what I'm talking about when I talk about values. They don't know what I'm talking about. This is language that is mother's milk language for you. That puts you in an incredibly privileged position when it comes to making good choices. But still do that work. What's really important to you? What really matters? Am I being honest with myself? Do that first, because when you are being honest with values, I'll say it the other way around. When you are pulled into the emotional and physical questions, very often we like to not deal honestly with the values thing. Meaning, there's nothing to lose if you're not emotionally and physically connected to someone. There's nothing to lose. If I walk into the situation, I can see immediately our values don't connect. Then if I walk out, I haven't lost anything. If I'm already emotionally and physically getting more, into this, or this is working for me better, or I'm getting more comfortable, I'm not gonna be honest with myself. And I tell you for a fact, I think, a subjective fact over here, the best friend that you have when you're dating is your willingness to be honest with yourself. You can kid everybody. But if you're willing to be honest with yourself, if you're willing to say, I really want this to work, but I know this is wrong, you are a much better advantage than if that's not something that you're willing to do. It can be painful sometimes, because sometimes you risk losing something which looks kind of nice on the outside. But your willingness to be honest is what's going to help you get what you need more than anything else in a relationship, and that is clarity. That is the ability to say, I've done my Michlalah, I've been through I, I've been through P, I've been through E, I know that this all has potential. And now I'm able to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless me with the sense that this is the right thing, right? That's clarity. Clarity is very important. Sometimes people have said to me, if I have I and E and P, do I still have to marry him? If you're asking like that, the answer is probably no. Okay, I and E and P have to be there for the relationship to work, and you have to have a sense that goes even beyond all your reasoning and your logic. Something that comes from a deeper part in you that you know this is the right thing to do. You've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to be honest. Okay. So we put I first because it's easier to be honest when it's just I on the table and not all the E and P stuff. And I put P last, like I said before, because the P that is developing as I and E is clarifying is a much more reliable sense of attraction than one just based on how the person looks from a picture. Okay? Yes?
How do you know if the person that you're dating is being honest about what their values are?
If they are very committed to lying, you can't know for sure. What you can get a sense is whether this person is someone who is invested in being honest about it, or someone who's just trying to impress you. Number one. And you don't necessarily get that by asking them. You get that by if this person is willing to say, I'm just really worried about this, so is this going to work for us? If you can see that they are committed to an honest exposure, or whether they're just trying to sell themselves. Is this person willing to talk about their weaknesses? Is this person willing to risk the relationship in order to find out whether it's really going to work? Or is it someone who's just, the answer to everything is it's fine? Number one, I think that's the first thing. And I think number two, in general, I think people give themselves away a lot. Is this a person who is really smiley face to face and and turns around and rolls his eyes and pulls, and says unspoken lashon hara? Or is this a person who's an honest person? Is this a person who says whatever everybody else needs to hear? And when they're not listening, has a whole different story. Is this a person who does act in general with integrity? Meaning with you, what they'll do is with you, they might be trying to con you, but you'll see them conning everybody else around you. Or you'll see them being an honest person. You'll see them saying, I had a confrontation with my friend because I was upset with him. That's an honest person. So you have to pick up the clues with people. You have to ask them the questions and you have to pick up the clues. And I would also say that very often, if you're a bit blinded in a relationship, everybody around you can see it. Okay? If all the people around you, and I mean the people that count, your parents and your very close friends, if they're all very, very worried about something, not 10 times out of 10, but 9 times out of 10, they're seeing something that you don't want to see yourself. So part of the honesty is not necessarily, is to pay attention to that. And again, we have to qualify that. If you're frummer than all your family and your friends, and you want to marry someone frummer, and they're all like, "What are you doing? You're too frum." Like that might mean that they just don't understand you. But if you have people, in your life who really get you and they really understand, they respect what you want, and they're all noticing something that you haven't noticed yet, the chances are they're noticing something that you haven't noticed yet, and it's important to pay attention to it. Even if you disagree in the end, at least give that conversation, just say, okay, I don't want to make a mistake. What is it? Why do you think this is a bad idea? Explain it to me. Let me take this seriously. Okay. Any other questions? That was a very good question. Yes.
So you said one of the values would be, let's say, like winning. So how much of that is kind of, let's say, someone wants to move to Israel and one person's not sure about that? Is that a good example?
It depends how much of a value it is to you. Okay, so I always wanted to live in Israel. Always. I mean, always, like since I was 11. And then I ended up spending 10 years in Chutz La'aretz. Why? Because my husband said to me, so why do you want to live in Israel? When we were dating, it wasn't my husband yet. So I said, he's like, no, what? I said, I want to be in the place where I can do Avodas HaKodesh. And then he asked me such an annoying question. He said, so if it's because of the Avodas HaKodesh, does that mean that if there was a better place in Israel for you to do Avodas HaKodesh, you'd want to go there then? That's so irritating. It was irritating because he was right. I wanted to live in Israel, but what I wanted more was to be in the place where I could serve Hashem best. And I guess if the occasion meant that it was somewhere else, then I would have to do that. But if that's not meaning he hit a deeper value than the one I was expressing. It wasn't law. It was social. It was making a better world. It wasn't money. It was, So that's what I mean by core value. Get to the bottom of it, then you can have, more space. However, if I bumped into a girl recently, and I thought someone in her family had died. She was crying so hard. I said, what happened? She goes, she couldn't breathe. She couldn't breathe. Mama thought something terrible had happened. I just met with my Rebbetzin. I'm like, yeah. And I told her I want to marry a guy who wants to live in Israel. I'm like, okay. And she said, maybe we should consider marrying someone who doesn't. That was conversation. I said, sweetheart, if you feel that deeply about it, maybe you should. Meaning her whole world, somebody said to me, maybe you should maybe there's more guys in America, maybe you should marry a guy, She went into complete meltdown, this. It was nothing to do with it. It was she has to be in Israel. Finish. She can't breathe. So if that's your core value, that's your core value. I don't have to judge yours. You don't have to judge mine. But you have to know what that means to you. Yeah.
Obviously, it's relative to different people, but how much time would you give for to be able to just get to know a person? Some people date for 2 weeks, or some people date for 2 years. I'm saying it's relative, but how much time once you feel comfortable and you take to develop?
Well, if you really want to know someone, probably about 70 years. And that's just the truth. Meaning you're going to learn things about yourself and about him forever and ever and ever and ever. So what you need is to have enough information that you don't know everything, but you have a deep enough sense of core ingredients that you can make it work. And you're right, that does vary from, first of all, from person to person. Some people are very easy to read, and other people, they take a long time to unlayer them. Number one. And sometimes the nature of the relationship, you can just get into a very deep sense of knowledge. I mean, my husband and I dated for 2 weeks, I have to say, although we had worked together for the month before, so I had a lot of information. And someone said, like, how do you know everything about him? And I said, I honestly know that I don't know everything about him. I said, but I feel like I'm making a cake over here. Like, I don't know if it's going to be cherry, vanilla, or chocolate, but I have flour, eggs, and sugar. I know that. It's going to be a cake. And that I know. The rest I'll work with. So and the truth is, the deeper you know yourself, the easier it is. So let's say I walk in, I always give this example, and it's a silly example, there's a lot of MS in it. If you walk into a shop and you're like, I need a pair of shoes to match my dress, and everyone's, they show you this shoe and that shoe and that shoe and this shoe, and you just, no, and finally someone says, like, just take a pair of shoes. I can't, it doesn't match my dress. What does the dress look like? I don't know. So you're going to be shopping for a long time. But if you really know what the dress looks like, so already you've got such a better, you know, if you know very deeply what your deep needs are, your deep emotional needs, and you've done that work, and you meet someone who can provide you with that, then you know that. If you know what's the most important value to you, and you've got someone who's got that for you, then you know that. The more you have, the more you know yourself, the shorter your list becomes of what you need. Guaranteed. The more self-awareness you have, the shorter your list is. Because you know the things which are non-negotiables, they're deal breakers, and you can meet 10 guys. If they don't have that, it's not going to work. So that ability to identify the right person for you becomes clearer the more self-knowledge you have. But I wouldn't give it a time thing. I would give it a let the process roll itself out until you hit clarity. That deep sense of like, and my best definition for clarity, because I really don't like the definition that everybody seems to give, which is like, you just know, because it's just really irritating. But my best definition for clarity, if it's a little bit more helpful, is it's something that when you know it, you've known it all along. That's what it feels like. Once I know it, I feel like I knew it all along. Yeah. And I want to stop soon because it's coffee cake time. It's very important. Yes. Well, that's what I meant by honesty. You have to be honest with yourself. You don't have to have everything exactly identical. You have to have compatibility, which means I can put myself behind what you stand for, and you can put yourself behind what I stand for, and I have respect for it. If I don't really, but I'm telling myself that I do because I really, really like you so much, then I'm kidding myself. There's nothing to work with if you're not willing to be honest. The honesty feeling is like this. I'll define the honesty feeling for you, okay? I'm so committed to finding the right person that I'll go through the pain of admitting that you're not it if you're not. That's how honest you have to be. I'm so committed to marrying the right person that I'm willing to go through the pain of recognizing that you might not be that right person. If I'm not willing to go through that pain, and I've already determined that you are the right person because that's how much I want this to be the right person, I can't be honest. I can't be honest because I made a decision already. I want the outcome that I want. Honesty means the outcome may change. Honesty means the outcome might change from the one that I want, and I'll do that if I have to. If that's not happening, then the whole thing's a Michlalah batala. Okay. I think we'll stop now. Thanks for being a lovely audience. Hatzlacha rabba. Let me bless you with knowing very, very quickly if you're dating someone that's not the right person for you, not having too many of those, and knowing with deep clarity when it is the right person, and Kadosh Baruch Hu should send you that person in its right time, but that right time shouldn't take too long. Okay.